One of the films that was in the running that I did not select as one of my top 10 or even top 20 was the 2009 film No Impact Man. There is, however, an interesting scene in the film where the title character, No Impact Man Colin Beavan, has a discussion with his toddler daughter about consumerism. As he explains to her, a consumer desiring to make environmentally sound purchases is faced with an extraordinary job, as this can require a great deal of research. In an effort to short-circuit all this, Beavan suggests simply consuming less, a lot less. It's a simple idea, so simple, in fact, that even a toddler can apparently understand it. In a certain way, it also forms the basis of the response to consumerism known as minimalism. In one sense, minimalism is hardly new, as most human beings throughout history have probably gotten by with the bare minimum, or at least nearly so, needed for life. Even today, for a broad swath of people across the planet, this is likely still true. But what we are talking about here is voluntary minimalism. Relatively wealthy people who could buy lots of stuff, but choose not to for environmental and other reasons. In that sense, minimalism is a first world solution to a first world problem. However, since the first world is far and away the largest contributor to the climate crisis, this approach deserves our attention. In America, at least as early as the 19th century, people began amassing all sorts of consumer stuff as consumer culture began to build momentum. One of the earliest critics of this phenomenon was Henry David Thoreau, who, I think, can rightfully be considered one of the great grandparents of American minimalism, as he pondered the bare minimum necessary for life, then acted on what he learned during his relatively short Walden experiment. In recent years, this minimalism has emerged as a cultural movement designed to counter rampant consumerism. Joshua Fields, Milburn, and Ryan Nicodemus, featured in the film Minimalism, a documentary about the important things, are two leading proponents of the minimalist lifestyle. As this film makes clear, one of the interesting aspects of minimalism is that people are not necessarily adopting this lifestyle for just environmental reasons. As Milburn and Nicodemus explain on their website, minimalism is a tool that can assist you in finding freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from worry, freedom from overwhelm, freedom from guilt, freedom from depression, freedom from the trappings of the consumer culture we've built our lives around. Real freedom. Many people believe that responding to the climate crisis on a personal level will mean that we have to live without quite a bit, which means that we will have to live drab lives of deprivation. What I find intriguing about minimalism is that this group of individuals voluntarily has decided to do without quite a bit because they believe that this is a better way to live. This was also Thoreau's message. Intriguing, after experimenting with a life of minimalism, Thoreau, Milburn, Nicodemus, and many others have all confirmed that this is indeed a better life. So, is minimalism an important response to the climate crisis? One thing to consider is No Impact Man Colin Beavan's assertion that simply consuming less is enough. It would be great if it were, in fact, this simple. However, seemingly similar products and practices can have very different environmental footprints, especially when you consider the energy used to make them, their useful lifespans, the sort of materials which they are made, the conditions in which they are manufactured, and so forth. Hence, it is not enough to just consume less. We need to make sure that we make the right decisions when we do consume. Nonetheless, although minimalism is not an environmental film per se, living a minimalist lifestyle can have significant environmental impact. I'm curious to hear what you think about the film. Is minimalism a viable and meaningful option? While minimalism is a great start, a number of theorists have been considering the next step. Two such thinkers are Julia Shore in her book True Wealth, How and Why Millions of Americans Are Creating a Time-Rich, Ecologically Light, Small-Scale, High-Satisfaction Economy, and Tim Kasser in The High Price of Materialism. While both books are well worth reading, New Dream has conveniently put together two short videos that nicely introduce both. Incidentally, New Dream, formerly the Center for the New American Dream, was, as their website explains, founded in 1997 by a group of forward-thinking activists and philanthropists who sought to draw greater attention to the links between individual action, social justice, and broader environmental impacts, and between excessive materialism and negative impacts on human well-being, including children's development. In True Wealth, Shore in many ways takes a minimalist approach. However, minimalism, from Thoreau through to modern minimalists, has largely been a personal choice. Schur considers what if an entire society took a similar approach by adopting a new economic model, which he calls a plenitude economy. The idea is simple. People would work less, maybe a lot less, like in Sweden, where the work week is just 30 hours, and hence have more time for things that would make their lives better and more rewarding, like growing some of their own food and other DIY projects. They would also have far more time for activities that would make them happier. In short, Schur's message is that while personal change, and that's of the minimalist variety, for example, are obviously terrific and absolutely necessary, we also need to think in terms of larger system change, involving the sort of economic and political change that she recommends. Tim Kastner's The High Price of Materialism, both the book and the video snippet from New Dream, considers the impact that materialism, in the sense of ramped-up consumerism, has in our lives. It is not a pretty picture. As he makes clear, materialism makes us less happy and more anxious, depressed, and selfish, for a start. So I'm curious to hear what you think. Can we maximize minimalism, so to speak, by building our society and economy on less materialistic values? Would this indeed be better for us and the planet? Could we actually make this happen? In other words, could we get enough people to go along with it to actually reinvent our materialist culture? Even if you are doubtful that we can, shouldn't we at least try? As usual, I will be responding to a number of your comments and responses in a future episode.